The developers decided to update the villagers' mechanics. And starting with version 1.202, librarians no longer offer any enchantments. Now, the range of enchanted books depends on the biome in which the villager is located. For example, you will no longer be able to buy a frostwalker in the desert. But for this, you will need to go to the snowy villages and find residents there, or build your settlement there from scratch. This feature is being experimented with, and anyone can enable it on version 1.202 when creating it. The distribution of enchantments by biome raises questions in the Minecraft lore. For example, why can projectile protection be obtained only from the inhabitants of the jungle? Or why such an important enchantment, Silk Touch, exclusively available in snowy villages? The developers distributed the books into biomes for a reason. Of course, this balances the game by forcing the player to travel to different places, but they also scattered the books in exactly the right places, making references to the history of temples, to the civilization of the villagers in general. And this is an equally important question. Where did the villagers get the enchanted books, and who taught them how to enchant before our character came to the world of Minecraft? Sit back, Marcus is with you, and we'll start Minecraft Theory. As already mentioned, this is exactly a balance update, but it is also obvious that the enchantment of fire protection was distributed by the developers in the desert biome for a reason. Since you are in the desert where there is a village, you can only buy fire protection for armor from the librarian. Since we've started talking about the desert, let's look at the enchantment of this particular village first. Thorns, from the 1st to the 3rd level, are available only here. Why did this enchantment appear in a village like this? Thorns shield the wearer of the armor as well as others nearby from attacks by hostile creatures, including villagers who are unable to defend themselves. A villager in Nazarite armor enchanted completely on thorns of the 3rd level can easily kill several zombies. Where did this enchantment come from? When you go outside, the first thing you will see that does not merge with the endless sand is a cactus. We know that the villagers grow these cacti in their village. They have studied this plant. We make a logical conclusion that the villagers have adopted the mechanics of the cactus. The villagers have discovered how to craft armor that shields you from hits, much like a cactus. This charm. There are only villages here, and other villages that have not seen cacti do not know this mechanics. Now, we have analyzed the history of the appearance of the enchantment Thorns. After all, it did not arise just like that. Someone conjured, experimented, and in the end, it turned out what happened. Any enchantment was invented once, and thorns appeared in just such an obvious way. Other enchantments in different villages are not as logical as the desert thorns. There are more than one enchantment in the desert. There are as many as 3, plus one additional one, such as sharpness or efficiency. These enchantments are attached to certain biomes as a bonus if you upgrade the librarian to a high level. Fire protection is the second invention of desert dwellers, ideal for fighting fire. Everything is logical here. The hot biome speaks for itself. Infinity is a bow enchantment that allows you to shoot endlessly with only one arrow in your inventory until the bow breaks. The desert is a flat biome where mobs spawn especially intensively, including cadavers. It is dangerous to engage them in close combat because their attacks have a starvation effect. That is why it is possible to purchase enchantments from villagers that enhance long-range weapons. Snow biomes are inhabited by residents who are insulated in winter furs. However, their villages can only be found on snowy plains, where there is enough free space. Such settlements also have librarians selling enchantments: Frostwalker, Aqua Affinity, Looting, and Silk Touch. Looting's enchantment could be a salvation for the inhabitants of the snowy biomes. It increases the chance of getting more meat, wool, or feathers from killed mobs, which is especially important in harsh climates. There are pigs, sheep, chickens, and cows in the farms of the snowy villages, which means mining helps to get more meat to survive in the cold, as well as more wool and skin to create warm clothes. This enchantment is not found in other biomes, because the inhabitants there do not lack food. They have their own difficulties from which they create their own enchantments. Enchantment of Aqua Affinity removes slow-breaking blocks underwater. You've probably noticed that it's harder to extract resources underwater. But why are the villagers selling this enchantment here? Like many things in Minecraft, everything is connected here. Underwater, there are prismarine temples which, according to lore, the player must explore in order to collect sponges. Interestingly, such temples appear exclusively in cold oceans, and not in warm ones where there are coral reefs. With the enchantment of aqua affinity, it becomes easier to mine sponges or gold. And here an interesting thought arises. Suddenly, I began to think that the villagers were pushing us to explore the ocean monument. Indeed, in these same villages, cartographers sell maps indicating their location. And you can get to the temple not only by boat, but also with the help of the Frostwalker, which allows you to quickly navigate through the water. There remains the enchantment of Silk Touch, and there is a connection here too. Please note that ice fountains often stand in the center of snowy villages. An igloo can be not only snowy but also icy. Ice in Minecraft can only be obtained with the Silk Touch enchantment, so everything is logical here. As for the jungle, they do not have. It has its own village, but it seems that the developers have decided to add a little hardcore. Therefore, if we want villagers, we will have to breed them there ourselves. The first enchantment associated with this biome is feather falling. The explanation is obvious. The jungle is famous for its tall trees, the tallest in the game. Therefore, it was here that enchantment was invented to reduce fall damage. The next two enchantments, projectile protection and strength, are both related to bows. Strength increases arrow damage, while projectile protection reduces hit damage. And here the logic is traced again. If you look at the jungle temples, you can find traps with crossbows shooting arrows in them. To protect themselves from such threats, the inhabitants of the jungle came up with the idea of projectile protection. It is also worth paying attention to the distributors themselves. When crafting them, a bow is used, which means that the inhabitants of the jungle have already dealt with these weapons and use them to create mechanisms more often than residents of other villages. Therefore, it is not surprising that they know the secret of damage-enhancing enchantment. Now let's move on to the swamp, which, like the jungle, does not have its own village. However, residents born in this biome can sell Depth Strider, Respiration, and Curse of Vanishing. Depth Strider is not just an enchantment for the seabed. It also works when the character is waist-deep in water, or just swimming. Taking into account the swampy terrain, where each 20 blocks of land is replaced by water several times, this is a very useful effect for shoes. It's the same with Respiration. It gives the player more time underwater. However, why dive into murky swamp waters is an open question, but if you need it, enchantment will come in handy. As for the Curse of Vanishing, this is the first curse in our analysis, and its appearance is most likely related to witches living in swamps. In fact, they are the only intelligent inhabitants of this biome. Interestingly, witches are associated with the Elijahs, and even participate in raids as healers. And those, in turn, possess much more powerful magic and curses, so it is possible that the Curse of Vanishing came from them. The taiga has its own natural villages, and the charms that can be found in these places include the fire aspect, flame and blast protection. These sword and bow charms are explained quite simply. They make it easy to light bonfires that are found only in these villages. Besides the taiga, it's not the warmest biome, and judging by their clothes, the inhabitants dress warmer than, for example, the inhabitants of the plain or swamp. Fire and immediately cooked food from mobs will not hurt them. Yes, I understand that these enchantments fit well into the snow biome, but more suitable enchantments have already been added there for their conditions. Blast protection, in turn, it perfectly protects against dynamite, which the villagers do not interact with. The nearest exploding creature they encounter is a creeper. He is even depicted on a manta ray or on a priest's cloak. Of course, although the villagers apparently pray to him, life is more important to them, and that's why they came up with this enchantment. Of course, there are other villages that have enchantments that have not found their place in other biomes. For example, in the village on the plain, you can find Smite, Bane of Arthropods, and Knockback. Is it possible to say that there are more spiders or zombies in these villages? Of course not. It's just that the developers decided to cast these charms, and that's what we as a result we have. The same goes for Savannah, where you can find enchantments like Sweeping Edge and Knockback. However, there is also the Curse of the Binding of the Savannah, and it can be associated with the gourds that are most commonly grown in this particular biome. I'm not saying that pumpkins are absent from other biomes, It's just that there are more of them in savannas, although it probably seems that way to me. There is also one question that we would like to discuss. Now that we know what enchantments librarians sell, were all these enchantments invented by them? I think that's not entirely true. The civilization of the inhabitants did not invent enchanted books in every biome for many reasons. They appeared at a certain point before the arrival of the player, and their production was discontinued. Of course, a resident can print many books with enchantment, fire protection, but you won't be able to come up with a new enchantment, like a high jump inspired by frog mechanics. What am I getting at? The fact is that there aren't even that many enchantments in the villages that I would like to turn ordinary books into magical ones. The enchantment table and the decoding of the galactic language available only to our player. From this, we can conclude that the enchantments that exist in the game were created by people just like us. The characters before us probably had friendly contact with the residents, as evidenced by their good attitude towards us and the drawings on the jars. Thus, it can be assumed that enchantments are the inventions of players who lived before us, but suddenly disappeared. They left their magic to the inhabitants, who now share it with us, as with the last representative of the human race. This completes the theory. If you liked it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Here are a lot of interesting things about Minecraft. Well, I say goodbye, Macus was with you. Good luck to all, bye-bye.